Hello, APUSH Nation. I'm Mr. Zagari. Welcome to the APUSH Underground from the Underground Garage. And welcome to this edition of Content Spotlight, where we take a look at and highlight a specific topic in one of our units and explain its importance and identify its broader historical connections and implications. Today I will be discussing the bridge in political ideology between Alexander Hamilton and Abraham Lincoln. The Whigs. Before we get into depth on the Whigs, let's start with a little context. After the War of 1812, the climate of politics was known as the era of good feeling. A sense of nationalism was sweeping America as a result of becoming a more independent economic nation, and the Federalist Party had collapsed. With the signing of the Treaty of Ghent in 1814 and the end of the War of 1812, many Americans viewed the Federalists as traitors as a result of their secret meetings in Hartford, known as the Hartford Convention. Although historians such as Joanne Freeman from Yale argues that Republicans may have started this rumor to weaken the political party. In the end, though, the Federalist Party collapsed, leaving only the Jeffersonian Republicans as the only political party in the United States. While the party may have collapsed, meaning the Federalists, their principles and beliefs did not. Hamiltonian ideology lived on through Republicans like Westerner and Speaker of the House Henry Clay. And by 1834, Clay would be one of the founders of the new American Whig Party, formally putting an end to the single-party system in U.S. politics. The Whigs were an opposition party that challenged the presidency of Andrew Jackson, who they would call, or who I should say Clay dubbed the term, King Andrew. While their party was in opposition to the Jacksonian Democrats, who stood for the common man, they still pulled many Democrats into their ranks. In addition, they also pulled a basis from those looking for moral reform. Remember, this is also the era of the Second Great Awakening, those looking for a spiritual democratization. They also pulled from abolitionists as well as those who were more lenient on Native American policy, basically those who rejected Jackson's Indian Removal Act of 1830. The party platform would be reminiscent of the original Federalist Party. Yes, my friends, Hamilton lives on. What we see here is the party platform from May 1st, 1844. And it states, and I quote, "Resolved that these principles may be summed as comprising as well as regulated currency, a tariff for revenue to defray the necessary expenses of the government, and discriminating with special reference to the protection of the domestic labor of the country, the disruption of the proceeds of the sales of public lands, a single term for the presidency, a reform of executive usurpations, and generally such as an administration of the affairs of the country as shall impart on every branch of the public service the greatest practicable efficiency, controlled by the well-regulated and wise economy." Okay, they're looking for this economic stronghold of the United States. They supported the Second National Bank, especially since Jackson had destroyed the bank in the 1830s. Jackson's destruction of the bus would eventually lead to another panic in 1837. Sorry, Martin Van Buren. In addition, they were advocates of a loose interpretation of the Constitution with stronger federal power. Their most well-known voice would be for infrastructure improvements. They would support Clay's American system and look to unite the nation through roads and canals. They looked to fix people as well as infrastructure of the nation. They supported many of the antebellum reformers of the era and pulled a large base from the Protestant evangelicals of the time. Jacksonians would argue that the Whigs were the party of the rich and would trample on the rights of the common man with their strong federal outreach. While the Whig Party nominated several candidates between 1836 and 1852, only two William Henry Harrison in 1840, and Zagari Old Rough and Ready Taylor in 1848 would ever be elected president on their own, and they both died during their first terms. Two other Whigs became president through the process of secession. John Tyler, who ironically his grandson just passed away last year, more on that, succeeded to the presidency after Harrison, excuse me, it's supposed to rain tomorrow. I should wear a coat out. I don't want to catch a cold or, worse yet, pneumonia. Death in 1841, but was expelled from the party shortly afterwards. The last Whig president, Millard Fillmore, assumed the office after Zachary Taylor's death in 1850. The question of slavery was something that was not a major component of the Whig platform, but still would be the reason why the party would eventually dissolve in the 1850s. And we'll see more on that when we talk about the rise of the Republican Party. So now let's look at our reasoning. Now we're going to look to connect the Whig Party across time periods. So we're looking at the rise of political parties. We're looking at the ideology of this political party, the platform, if you will. The Whig Party can be connected not only to Hamilton and the Federalists, as we have stated throughout the video, but we can also connect to 20 years ahead in the election of Lincoln and the new Republican GOP party, the start of our modern-day Republicans. Sorry, don't get confused. Just go with it. Lincoln would take on many philosophies of the Whigs, and in fact, his political career as a Whig, started his political career as a Whig and was one of the earliest members of the Illinois Whig Party, a Western state. And we quote here, from the early 1830s, Lincoln considered himself a steadfast Whig and professed to friends in 1861 to be an old-line Whig, a disciple of Henry Clay. The biggest draw for him was the Whig platform for governmental improvements. He would be an advocate for infrastructure improvements throughout his political career. The most notable was his taking on the Transcontinental Railroad, the biggest infrastructure project of the time. By doing so, Lincoln was hearkening back to Clay's American system. While Clay was looking to unite the nation and have the nation become interdependent and therefore becoming more independent, Lincoln was also looking for infrastructure as a vessel of unification both during and at the end of the American Civil War. Furthermore, the philosophies of Hamilton are also prevalent, with Lincoln in his support of the expansion of industry and infrastructure. And again, folks, Hamilton always wins. As we conclude this content spotlight, let us take a look at our historical themes. The rise of the Whigs solidifies the second party system, as well as the opposition to Jackson, reflecting the changes in the social, political, and economic ethos in our American and national identities. While their platform based on infrastructure to bring the nation into the future reflects on the theme of work, exchange, and technology. And lastly, we see politics and power as the once defunct Federalists see their principal legacies carried on through the Whig Party, and by the 1850s, the new Republican Party. So thanks for joining us, and please check out our unit reviews, writing highlights, and of course, APUSH on the road. This is Mr. Zagari from the Underground Garage. Keep on keeping on.